Shalom, Lord Christ is on us of 1,000 Yahanna. This is the Monday night history class. The topic today is the history of Cuba. All right. Cuba is a country that is in the Caribbean, and the brothers that are there are brothers from Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh. All right. So let's get into it. All right. Officially, the Republic of Cuba is a country comprising the island of Cuba as well as Isla de la Juventud and several minor archipelagos. Cuba is located where the northern Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean meet. Cuba is located east of the Yucatan Peninsula, which is Mexico, south of both the American state of Florida and the Bahamas, west of Hispaniola, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic, and north of both Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Havana is the largest city and the capital, and other major cities include Santiago de Cuba and Camagüey. The official area of the Republic of Cuba is 42,000 square miles. So it's a pretty decent sized land. All right, and it's over 11 million people that lives in Cuba. All right. The territory that is now Cuba was inhabited by the Ciboney Taino people from the 4th millennium BC until Spanish colonization in the 15th century. The 15th century was a colony of Spain until the Spanish-American War of 1898, where Cuba was occupied by the United States and gained nominal independence as de facto United States protectorate in 1902. So basically, they were under Spanish colonization. So they were under Spain until the Spanish-American War, which when that happened, it became a protectorate of the United States. So they got protection from the United States basically. So, and you know anything our oppressor, he say he's doing you a favor, he's protecting you, right? Guess what he always doing? They get him away to oppress you even further.
Right.
So the whole time he's trying to say that he's a protectorate, which means they not protecting the people to the point of they're trying to keep them safe. It's not out of a good will that they're doing it. What they're basically saying is this is a good land of resources and we don't want another country to have it. So that's the whole premise of what they're doing. All right. In 1902, as a fragile republic, in 1940, Cuba attempted to strengthen its democratic system, but mounting political radicalization and social strife culminated in a coup and subsequent dictatorship under Fulgencio Batista in 1952. Upon corruption and oppression of the Batista's rule led to his ousting in January 1959 by the 26th of July movement, which afterwards established communist rule under the leadership of Fidel Castro. Since 1965, the state has been governed by the Communist Party of Cuba. The country was a point of contention during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. And a nuclear war nearly broke out during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Cuba is one of a few extant Marxist-Leninist social states with a role of the vanguard Communist Party is enshrined in the Constitution. Under Castro, Cuba is involved in a broad range of military and humanitarian activities throughout both Africa and Asia. Now, culturally, it says Cuba is considered a part of Latin America. It is a multi-ethnic country whose people, culture, and customs derive from diverse origins. including the Taino Siboney peoples. The long period of Spanish colonization, the introduction of enslaved Africans, which was, of course, Israelites coming in, and the close relationship to the Soviet Union in the Cold War. Cuba is a founding member of the United Nations, the G77, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, Organization of American States. So these are all, they founded all of these organizations. It is currently one of the world's only planned economies. And a planned economy is like it's a type of economic system where investment, production, and allocation of capital goods takes place according to economy-wide economic plans and production plans. A planned economy may be used centralized, decentralized, participatory, or Soviet-type forms of economic planning. The level of centralization or decentralization is a decision-making. The participant depends on the specific type of planning mechanism employed. So it's they have the whole, like they have who their planners are going to be, who their doctors are going to be. The whole economy is planned out, and it's not like people do whatever they please that they want to do. All right. Cuba has a single party, authoritarian regime where political opposition is not permitted. So they don't have any type of opposition. So this is like a kingship, right? There's no type of opposition permitted. There are elections in Cuba, but they are not considered democratic. Censorship of information includes limits to internet access is extensive, and independent journalism is repressed in Cuba. Reporters Without Borders has characterized Cuba as one of the worst countries in the world for press freedom. So they don't like press coming out. They don't like anybody, they don't like anything negative to come about from their country, right? Anybody on the conference call? All right, now here the history. Before the arrival of the Spanish, Cuba was inhabited by two distinct tribes of indigenous peoples of the Americas, the Taino, including the Siboney people, and the Guanahatabe. I'm trying to say Guanahatabe. All right? And that's the indigenous people of Western Cuba at the time of European contact. Archaeological and historical studies suggest that Guanahatabe were archaic hunter-gatherers with a distinct language and culture from their neighbors, the Taino. They might have been a relic of an earlier culture and spread widely through the Caribbean before descendants of the agricultures, Taino. All right. See here. The ancestors of the Taino migrated from the mainland of South America, with the earliest sites dated to 5,000 BP. So, just like we always know, we didn't come from the brothers that's, native to this land. They didn't come from Alaska down to the Siberian Strait. They came from South America and they all went up. All right? The Taino arrived from Hispaniola sometime in the 3rd century AD when Columbus arrived. When Columbus arrived, they were the dominant culture in Cuba, having an estimated population of 150,000. It is unknown when or how the Guanahatabe arrived in Cuba, having both a different language and culture than the Taino. It is inferred that they were a relic population of pre-Taino settlers of the Greater Antilles. No, it says like so. Basically, in my research, it's basically saying that the Taino that the Yahanna, that they were sort of like the Tainos, but they had a different culture. Which of course these are different tribes. They're not the same tribes as Israelites. The Israelites, the ones in Maya, which is the Zebulon, they all had little differences of culture, right? That's the same thing here. Just like you could all be, our culture is similar but different from the Jamaicans, which is the Benjamite brothers, the Haitians, which is the Levite brothers. It's similar, but certain things are different, right? The Taino were farmers, as well as fishers and hunter-gatherers. So they were farmers. That shows like all Israel, we were farmers. That's our thing. That's why we were the greatest slaves for them. Right? Okay. Let me see here. Let me see here. Anybody joined the conference call yet? All right. Searching for Cuba's pre-Columbian roots. Roberto Ordonez Fernandez first began unearthing artifacts in and around Cuba's eastern tip more than 40 years ago at the age of 17, and he hasn't stopped since. Ask anyone in the small city of Baracoa for El Arquelago, and you'll be directed to his narrow row house near the seafront. Most of what Ordonez has found was left behind by the Taino, the Arawak Indian people that Columbus encountered in Baracoa when he first landed there, November of 1492. Ordonez is best known for establishing Baracoa's Cueva del Paraíso, which is Cave of Paradise Archaeological Museum, which opened in 2004, said in which he had an abandoned Taino cave at the edge of town. So he built a little museum inside of a Taino cave. Let me see if I can find what I wanted to get to. Alright. The Taino were the most populous of several groups who inhabited Cuba when Columbus sailed into the Baracoa harbor. The explorer described them in his journal as friendly and generous people who lived simply, nothing noting pointedly. They would make good servants. That's what he said when he saw them. And they was peaceful, right? And he said they would make good servants because that's what that's what they were looking for. Good servants, right? He wasted no time and erected a wooden cross on the shore. Not long after that, he enslaved the Taino in the name of Spain. First thing they got to do is put a big old wooden cross there, right? Because, even the Bible tells you, that it tells you about what everybody think is the market, the market of the beast, the microchip. But you see how they do these brothers here. The first thing they do is give them Christianity. They ain't getting no damn microchip. It's been 2022 and you still ain't got no damn microchip, right? But if you so worried about a microchip, you need to throw away your phone in. Your phone it got all your data inside of your phone. If you so worried about a damn microchip that they gonna plant inside you, then I don't know why you got a cell phone in. All of iPhones, Android phones, that's telling your whole life is inside of your cell phone. And you worried about a damn microchip. Alright? The Taino began to die out quickly from smallpox, violence, and overwork at the hands of the Spanish colonizers. But despite claims to the contrary, they didn't disappear completely. Some fled into the mountains, others mixed with colonists or Africans fleeing slavery, sometimes maintaining Taino customs and farming practices. So a lot of people, they try to tell you that they were all gone, which is not true. So that's what they do. They go in, kill everybody, and then they try to give out reports that say that they're no more there. So now, well, if nobody, so then now they can come up to the conclusion, well, if there's nobody in this land, then I can go and take it then. It's uninhabited. So they can just go and take this land. That's what they do. Even though they're the ones that killed the people, they can still say, well, nobody's here now, so we might as well take it. So, but you see, a lot of them fled into the mountains. Others mixed with colonists or Africans. So you had some that got mixed in, that you got your white Cubans, right? Like Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro is a oppressor. He is not a Menesa. He is an oppressor, right? So they'll mix in with the women, and then so if you notice one thing that oppressors always do, right? It's like a couple things they do. Like, they didn't want to fight in the mountains, because if they go to the mountains, then the Taino have the advantage, right? So instead, they build like a circle around you, right? And if they keep you on this circle, they can build all around you, right? And then they can keep you from growing too big. You can't get too big because they're gonna keep that circle around you, and it'll be their circle of influence. But it's all around you, and they'll say, okay, you can live out there and do whatever you want to do, be free, but you still don't have control over your own damn country. That's what they do. They did the same thing to the Native Americans. They'll put them on reservations, right? And what is a reservation? A reservation is basically like, okay, we done already, dwindled your numbers. There's no real use in fighting anymore, because we stand to lose more than we particularly care for. So we gonna be like, okay, we gonna let y'all get this little plot of land that we don't want anyway. Y'all gonna live and do whatever y'all do out there while we take the rest of the land. So it's like a compromise between the leaders. A lot of times make this compromise, and then that's why all of the tribes end up getting destroyed, because they made that compromise. All right, who just joined?
Shalom, Yahweh Shem Shabbat, Officer Sean checking in.
All right, shalom on Christ, up. So that's what they do, and then they'll go and raise up some guy, some person, like all of a sudden he gonna be your leader, which is basically an Edomite. Somebody had an Edomite father, and whatever, Israelite tribe that is in that nation, that's what they'll be their mother. So it'll be like a half breed that you would call, right? And now he's the ruler over you. They did this in Panama, they did this in Mexico, They did this. They did this here with Fidel Castro. He's not. He's a heathen. Did you know that, Gashawn? That Fidel Castro is a heathen.
So like one, I just found out. I just found out a couple of years ago. I didn't know he was a heathen. I was watching a little small documentary on YouTube, and they was talking about that he was a heathen. So like.
Yeah, God, he's a heathen. So, and that's what they'll do. They'll just somebody go in, lay with one of the women, and then because that person has power and influence, now their child is like, you gotta think of matter of fact, is you Gashad, can you bring up scripture for me?
I'm driving right now. I'll be about 6-7 more minutes.
All right, God. So, like this white man know the book more than better than a lot of us do, right? We all know about the time of Noah, right? Let's see here. Remember the book of Genesis chapter 6 verses 1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born into them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days should be 120 years. And then it says in verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days. So people think that means that they were giant people, 8 foot, 9 foot tall people. And also after that, it was still giants. When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they have children to them, right? The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown, right? So that's telling you that they were giants. And then that's how you make a giant in a society. You get one noble line and mix it with another noble line, and then, you put them together, and that child is now a man of renown. So we knew all of this before we did. That's how you make a powerful leader. He doesn't necessarily have to be like, of course he gotta play the role, of course, and he gotta be trained up on how to politic and all of that. I get that, but here's the thing. See, it's similar to what they call balancing the ticket when you're a president. Balancing the ticket is basically, let's say you got Donald Trump on one end, right? So Donald Trump is gonna get to all of the far right? He gonna get all of those, devils that like to drive around with the Confederate flag, right? They love Trump. But then to balance the ticket, they'll put in somebody like hey, Gashawn, who the vice president right now? What's her name?
Shalaka out of one pit.
No, that was with Trump.
Hello?
Yeah, that was with Trump. The vice president right now is that chick.
Shalaka out of one, the female,
Can I think of her name right now? So that's what they'll do. They'll balance the ticket. So now, because Kamala Harris, right? So they'll put Kamala as the vice president. So it balances it out. So now you got somebody who represents, 95% of people, versus if you got two complete right, you know what I'm saying? You gonna split it in half. You're only gonna get 50-50. You know what I'm saying? But now if you get Trump and you get Kamala, you're gonna get 75% of the votes. You know what I'm saying? That's what they call balancing the ticket. Alright? And that's the same thing they did then. They were balanced because you have one person here of that, nation, and another person of the other nation, and they came together and had a child. Now this child is representation of both of them. So that's why they'll become more powerful in the earth, because now they can sympathize with being, like Fidel, he can sympathize with being a Cuban because his mother is a Cuban, right? His father is a devil. And that's the only thing that we be concerned with, right? Alright, let's go here. Alright. So the Taino, they died out quickly, right? Smallpox, violence, and overwork of the hands of the Spanish colonizers. But despite claims to the contrary, they didn't disappear completely. Some fled to the mountains and others mixed in. The colonial authorities refused to recognize the existence of the Taino as a people. Of course they refused them to be Taino as a people. Because if they put them they recognize them as a people, then that means they got rights. And of course they can't let Negroes and SHALAM have rights, right? Assigning their own last names to the remaining indigenous population. They wanted to eliminate Indian identity so there would be no indigenous title to the land, says Jose Barrero, a member of the Taino Nation of the Antilles and director of the Office for Latin America at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. But this did not stop some Taino from asserting their land rights in court, howbeit without success. The last indigenous land claim in Cuba was denied in 1850. So they wanted to get their land back, right? But they denied it in 1850. That was the last time we tried to get their land. See, that's what I'm saying. They'll go ahead and build all around them, keep them in the mountains where they can't fight, and then after they quote unquote civilize everything becomes calm and everything is working for the benefit of, Spain. Now they said, okay, well, we want our land back. They try to get it done politically, and it doesn't happen, right? Because they don't recognize you as a people. So they change your last name and then say, well, no, you can't be a Taino. Your last name is Rodriguez. You know what I'm saying? That's your last name, Manuel. That's a Spaniard name. You can't be Taino, right? Researchers who look for a surviving Taino culture during the 20th century failed to recognize what was right before their eyes. They were looking for people with loincloths and didn't find any, Barrero says. They didn't see the nuances. Taino in Cuba can't always be identified by physical traits, as Barrero research partner. Their customs are often the only evidence of Indian heritage. People still believe in Mother Earth and Father Son, he says. They go ask for permission from the Taino gods like Osine before they harvest something. Genetic analysis has recently bolstered the case for the continual Taino presence in the Caribbean. So they even said that DNA DNA, they trying to take the DNA. DNA is way too complex for them to try to say that, you were of this nation or of this people. It's too complex, especially for the Caucasoid mind. The people that really would understand these things would be the blacks and Hispanics, because just like with anything, we make it, right? The only thing is okay, anybody, did you watch that lecture, Gashad? I mean, not the lecture, did you watch the debate?
Well, I don't want you to see that.
I said, did you watch the debate?
Oh, no, I didn't watch it.
Okay. Well, there was one thing that was said. One of the dudes said, the other dude from the Nation of Islam or whatever he is, right? Whatever he said one thing. He said that why would you want to go and be Israel if all of the other nations are the ones that built everything? Like Egypt, you got the land of Cush, they had all these big relics of everything. He said, why would you want to then go and be an Israelite who really didn't build a whole lot, right? On the surface, that may sound like it makes sense, right? But the thing they don't understand is all of those things that make those places great, who built them in those countries? We did. We built the pyramids. That's why there's more pyramids in South America, North and South America than it is in Egypt. Because we built it. We're the builders, right? You got what is it, the Great Wall of China? Black people built that. Israelites built the Great Wall of China. They ain't gonna teach that in history classes. They ain't gonna bring none of that up. We built these great things that people wonder how it got built. We built it. So that's the same way. That's the reason why they can't understand DNA, because we the ones to figure it out. And the reason why we can't right now is because we under this oppression. If we weren't under oppression, man, we'll probably be damn near having flying cars right now. Anything you can think of, we'll probably have, right? But because we under this oppressor, and the big thing, you know, his God is money, that's why a lot of things, like, it stops progress of the whole earth, because his God is money. All right. Okay. After the 1959 Cuban Revolution, the new leadership tried to foster a stronger sense of Cubanness and frowned upon talk separate racial identities. So now here comes the integration. They don't want you to be any type of separate. We just want everybody to be Cuban now, just like you here. You're not African American, you're not Israelite, you're none of that. You just an African American. You're an American, right? The government was drastic about it for years and then wanted to come up, says Barrero. But the sudden collapse of the Soviet Union caused an identity crisis amongst Cubans, who suddenly found themselves short on food and basic supplies, and more likely to turn on traditional knowledge for making goods and medicines they needed. So, that should tell you really what happened here. Basically, this is how you oppress people, right? Gishar, did you ever watch the movie Fast Five?
So I got one. That's the one when Jason Statham first appeared.
No, it was the one where they was in Brazil.
Did they steal the vault with the dump trucks at the end?
Yeah, I think so. They stole it. They was riding around with the Chargers, stuff like that. I mean, I was watching that movie there, and the dude that was like, he ran the whole country, right? He ran the whole country. I remember one thing he said that was powerful. He said that the Spaniards, which I'm gonna teach on in Brazil as well. But one thing that he said the Spaniards came in there trying to show who was boss, right? And the native people killed all them bastards. But the Portuguese was a little, more cunning. They came with gifts. So what they did was they came in with trinkets, things that made their lives easier. Fresh water. They could take their kids to school. The kids can learn things, right? Now this might not have been exactly what they did in Cuba, but just imagine what they do. Like, you seen what they did with welfare and how welfare turned the black woman against the black man, right? Turned them completely against the black man, right? Well, damn welfare, pennies, right? Pennies. They had What they had our whole woman was against us in our own house now, and they was kicking us out the house because of a welfare check. Let me see if I can find that. All right. Ecclesiastes 7:7. Surely oppression make a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. That tells you right there. Surely an oppression, it would make you mad. So they would be mad about the oppression, right? But then they would give them a gift. That gift is that, cleaner water, something that make their lives feel better. See, that's the thing. That's why we such on drugs so much right now, right? Because instead of having freedom, which is having our own country, our own, our own laws and all of that, right? We'll rather have a substance that make us feel better at the moment. Christianity is one of those substances that makes you feel good at the moment. All right? So that's what happened. The Soviet Union caused, now when they, daddy, now they white daddy is falling because they was getting a protection under the Soviet Union. Now they didn't know what the hell was going on. Now they had to go and try to rely on themselves. They didn't have that food no more. They weren't able to stock those grocery stores up, right? You see what happened with COVID, right? Black women, they started looking at black men like you worth something. COVID happened, didn't it? They're looking around like, oh shoot, maybe I need a man, right? The same thing happened here. The basic supplies that you thought wasn't going anywhere started disappearing. So they would start going to traditional knowledge for making goods and medicines that they needed. Only in recent years have the nuances of the Cuban identity, including Taino roots, become an acceptable topic for discussion in the eyes of the government. They didn't even want them talking about being a Taino. And this is under Fidel Castro. That's how you know he a damn devil. He don't even want you to be your damn self. He wants you to be him, and he be you. That's the devil right there, man.
Right.
He become the native Cuban, but you become him. You become like he was, like he is, right? And he takes your whole nationality away from you. Now you don't even know who the hell you is. Okay. All right, 1 second. What's hard to bring out over here? It might be it over here. You make any questions so far? Okay, let me go to something else. Let's go back here. All right. Now you know what happened, right? They were living on their own, and of course the Spaniards came and wanted to take over. Columbus, he claimed this island for the Kingdom of Spain and named it Yahanna after John, Prince of Asturias. Like I said, how the hell you gonna go to somebody else's land and give it a name? or you got some stones on you. I'm gonna come to your house and name it House of Yahweh. You make no sense, right? You own the house, you've been living there for 300 years, and I'm gonna come to this place and name it, this is the House of Yahweh, right? In 1511, the first Spanish settlement was founded by Diego Velázquez de Cuellar at Baracua, Slovakia. Other settlements soon followed, including San Cristobal de la Habana, founded in 1515, which later became the capital. The indigenous Taíno were forced to work under the encomienda system, which resembled the feudal system in medieval Europe. Within a century, the indigenous people were virtually wiped out due to multiple factors, primarily Eurasian infectious diseases, to which they had no natural resistance to it, aggravated by harsh conditions of the repressive colonial subjugation. So they had all of that to face. They was getting sick, and then on top of it, they was all the oppression. They was literally worked to death, right? In 1529, a measles outbreak in Cuba killed 2/3 of those few natives who had previously survived smallpox. So right after they survived smallpox, then they brought the measles over here and knocked out 2/3 of them. May 18, 1539, Conquistador Hernando de Soto departed from Havana with some 600 followers to a vast expedition through the American Southeast, starting at what is now Florida in search of gold, treasure, fame, and power, of course, right? On September 1st, 1548, Dr. Gonzalo Perez de Angulo was appointed governor of Cuba. He arrived in Santiago, Cuba, on November 4, 1549, and immediately declared the liberty of all natives. He became Cuba's first permanent governor to reside in Havana instead of Santiago, and rebuilt Havana's first church made of masonry. Of course, this wasn't freedom of everybody, because they didn't abolish slavery till like 1880 something, right around there. By 1570, most residents of Cuba comprised a mixture of Spanish, African, and Taino heritage. But you know, a lot of brothers from the Southern Kingdom was brought over here as well, right? Cuba developed slowly, and unlike the plantation islands of the Caribbean, had a diversified agriculture. Most importantly, the colony developed as an urbanized society that primarily supported the Spanish colonial empire. By the mid-18th century, there were 50,000 slaves on the island, compared to 60,000 in Barbados and 300,000 in Virginia, as well as 450,000 in Saint Domingue, all of which had large-scale sugarcane plantations. So the big thing they were shipping out was sugarcane. So I remember I was talking to a brother at one time. He was trying to convince me that all black people, we were already here, that there wasn't anybody brought over on the slave ships, which I'm like, there's too much evidence of that they came over here in slave ships, right? But the thing with him, he was trying to say that it was all us or whatever, but he don't understand a lot of the history that happened with us, right? Some were brought over here, a lot were already here, right? And we mixed and mingled together, but they had to bring people over because they were dying too fast. They had a small number of slaves that was the natives, right? They had a number of them, but they needed more because they needed more profits. They needed more work getting done. So they needed more slaves, and the rest of them, though they were dying of smallpox. So what they have to do? They had to get more slaves, right? You need more free workers. So they brought us over. They brought like the Southern Kingdom and all the other brothers over there and brought them into Cuba. So they did with all the other islands, right? And people would say like, okay, now here's the thing too. All right, you would go over there. So let's say you got sugar cane, right? Let's just make this in a business sense, right? Let's say that sugar cane money, you own a boat, right? And you got sugar cane on this boat. And you try to take it from Cuba up to Europe somewhere, right? Once you get up there, what you want now?
You saying like once you get to the destination, you gonna want whatever resources they got, right?
You close. I mean, you should know. Like you should know this definitely, Gashan. You a truck driver. What's the logistics of it? You go up there with one thing. What do you want? What do you want from there?
It's a lot, dude. You want another? You want another load coming back? I guess.
Exactly.
God.
You want they call it a truck, and it's called a backhaul. So you want a haul to come back, cause you're not going. Cause you gotta remember, this is a crew you got. You gotta feed them. You gotta pay them to drive all the way over there. There's maintenance that gotta be done on the ship, right? They gotta be on this thing for a certain amount of time. You go want them to come back for free?
I ain't think about it like that.
That make any sense to you?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Would you do that? Would you go
sir.
a year? It took them about what, a year to get over there? You gonna come back and waste a whole damn year?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Hell no.
Go ahead. I ain't gonna come back empty. I'm gonna cut
something.
Come back with something.
If nothing else, at least gonna pay your expenses.
Oh God.
If nothing else, right?
Oh God.
It sound right to you, Kashan? Take one minute. Right? You a truck driver, right? Ain't that what truck drivers do?
That's what we do.
Exactly. You gonna go out, you gonna go to New York and you ain't gonna come bring them back? You was gonna drive on your own dime. Exactly. Even if it ain't paying nothing but fuel, which is your expenses. Even if you ain't putting no profit in your pocket, because you make your profit probably with the sugar cane. But you would at least pay your expenses on the way back. So why would they not do that? So that was the slaves coming in. So I mean, I don't know which one paid more, the slaves or sugar cane. I think probably the sugar cane probably paid more. Because for one, more of it lasted on that trip than the slaves did. That's for one. But they still brought enough back to make, of course, money. You know what I'm saying?
Oh God.
So that's just how it was, man. You gotta think of this as like, people try to think of it as like this wasn't organized. Like, don't think those other places they weren't going to other islands and getting other goods. Just like when you're in a truck driver, right? They call it LTL. It means less than truckload. So you'll get 10 pallets from here. You'll go somewhere else, get 10 pallets from there. Go get 10 pallets from here, 10 pallets in there. Now you got 40 pallets and stuff. Your truck is now full. But now you can get more money for that because you got all the variety coming in. Now you can get more money for that versus if you just took one load there, one particular product. So now you do it at it's almost like wholesale. You know what I'm saying? Because you got 40 tons of one product, right? For 40,000 pounds of one product. But now you got 40,000 pounds of 30 different things. Now that marks it up in value because there's less of the supply there. It's just supply chain. We all learn, supply and demand. Right? So, Salaki been in logistics for about 9 years. So, that's what that is, man. They make more money off of it. So, of course, they don't think they not going, getting tobacco from, Georgia and all of that, getting tobacco and cotton. Don't think they not doing that. Come on now. Of course they are. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. The one thing all devils will agree on, they will come to an agreement on is no greenbacks. They will come to an agreement. They don't care. A Nazi would be sitting with a fake Jew
Right.
over them greenbacks. They would sit at the table over them greenbacks, right? They do not care, right? Because they amoral. They're not immoral. They're amoral. They don't have morals. They have absence of morals. So they don't have a. So like when we try to say like we hate them because of what they did, they were like, well, we don't like what you did, but where that money at?
Right.
That's all it really is. Something they really care about. So, all right. Any questions so far? So yeah, but nothing came out of Europe because Europe ain't got nothing. Europe doesn't have any natural resources there. So I mean, there was even stories that they gave. They was sending so much sugar over there. They had stories that it was rotting all their teeth out. Like the Queen of England or whatever, or Queen of one of them state countries out there. Her teeth was rotten because she ate so much sugar. Damn. Yeah, that's how much sugar they was getting. And like, cause it was an export. Just like, how like exported cars are more expensive? Like a BMW is typically more expensive than a Ford. Because it's an export. So they gotta pay a fee for the travel to get it here. So it was only reserved for like the wealthy to go to get sugar. Right? So, and their biggest export was sugar. Right? Alright.
So y'all watch. You said their biggest export was sugar, and they didn't brush their teeth or nothing over there, so it just made it even worse. They don't wear no deodorant. Nothing. They
just funky. They just looking like the people out there in Idaho. All they do is smoke meth and
missing teeth.
All that. Yeah. If you ever been to Idaho, you know what I'm saying. They look. That's like just like the turd stain of America. Try to keep it clean. But if you're like Idaho out there, man, those is real devils. Like those is real Caucasians out there.
I done been out there. I know that.
Idaho?
Yeah, Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. You can go ahead, Gashan.
Alright, so I got it. Whatever you gotta say, that we spiritually connected, because you said the exact same thing I was gonna say.
What you about to say?
The meth effect.
Yeah, man, they look a damn mess out there.
Yeah,
I had to sit there one time for like a layover, wait for my load to get ready, and I was sitting there eating. I'm like, you some ugly white people. like all of them were just looking done. Like all of them. It was like, it wasn't like no, cause some, you can say like, okay, that's like a model oppressor. You could be like, okay, that's like a model. I'm sure she get a lot of dudes liking her.
Right,
nah, they all look like, I'm talking about just walking down the street, you seen trailer trash. Like, they look like, what was it, Dawn of the Dead out there, so they just look ugly. What was that zombie movie everybody, that zombie show?
The Walking Dead?
Yeah, that's what they look like out there. Try to tell you, man, they was looking through out there, bro. I'm like, man. And over there, like, all they do is get high. That's all they do. So, forgot where I was on that, but we'll get back to it. But, alright. Though Havana, which had become the third largest city in the Americas, was to enter an era of sustained development, increasing ties with North America during this period. The British occupation of the city proved short-lived. Pressure from London to sugar merchants, fearing a decline in sugar prices, forced negotiations with the Spanish over the captured territories. Less than a year after Britain captured Havana, it signed the 1763 Treaty of Paris together with France and Spain, ending the 7 Years' War. The treaty gave Britain Florida in exchange for Cuba. Cubans constituted one of the many diverse units which fought along the Spanish forces during the conquest of British West Florida. So they even fighting with the oppressor to go against Florida, right? Because they tried to capture the, Florida or whatever, right?
Okay.
So they was fighting alongside of them. Because you remember, Florida was owned by, I believe, it was owned by Great Britain. So that's why, like, that was a free state during this time. So a lot of the slaves, like the Underground Railroad, they actually went into Florida and not north. Like, they all tell you that they went north to, like, Ohio, Michigan, and all of that. No, they went south because that was why would they go all the way up there when they could just go south? That one state. You know what I'm saying? Alabama, they just go to Florida. Georgia, they go to Florida. South Carolina, they go to Florida. It's all right there, right? So why would they go through all of that to go north? Yet Florida was technically owned by a whole different country. So they was able to be free there. So I might do a history of Florida next time so we can get into that history of Florida and Seminoles. How that sound?
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Alright, but so yeah, that's where they was fighting alongside them. Like, they get us to fight. Like, what they do is they'll tell you that, okay, we'll give you freedom and all of that stuff if you fight alongside of us. And of course, we all know that was a lie. Right? We all know that was a lie. So they might have got a couple trinkets, but get your behind back in them chains. Go ahead.
So like what you just said is so heavy, you know what I'm saying? Because the Bible says that Esau, you know what I'm saying, being the most subtle beast of the field, you know what I'm saying? So
He's the most subtle, so he'll lie to you. Right? It's like the serpent in the garden. He will lie to you. Alright? The largest factor of growth for Cuba's commerce in the late 18th and early 19th century was the Haitian Revolution, when the enslaved peoples of what had been the Caribbean richest colony freed themselves through violent revolt. The Cuban planners perceived the region's changing circumstances with both a sense of fear and opportunity. They were afraid because of the prospect that slaves might revolt in Cuba as well, and numerous prohibitions during the 1790s of the sale of slaves in Cuba who had previously been enslaved in French colonies underscored this anxiety. The planters saw opportunity, however, because they thought that they could exploit the situation by transforming Cuba into the slave society and sugar-producing Pearl of Antilles that Haiti had been before the revolution. So now they say that this was happening, basically, that the Haitians had freed themselves. Like, before then, the Haitians were the biggest sugar-producing place. They produced the most sugar to anybody. But now, since they freed themselves, they said, okay, we can become that now. So, of course, they need more slaves. All right? So they was nervous about them revolting and all of that, so they put other prohibitions, which of course is, you can't be too many of y'all in the same place. They would, give you punishment for if, whatever can make them feel scared.
So like was loitering one of them? Like hanging out,
Yeah, loitering, that could be one. I mean, it doesn't say specifically, But you could just, you know what happened in America, right? I mean, hell, did anybody even know what laughing barrels are?
Somebody got one. Laughing barrels were when you around the oppressor, like if they had like a little comedy show or something, you're around the oppressor, if you gotta laugh, you gotta stick your head in the barrel and laugh. Is that what it is?
Yeah, cause they feel like the Negro laugh is so obnoxious to them. That's what they did. So just if the laugh, so of course they want you to, they would enforce you like, I'm trying to like really break it down to you, but like it starts off small, right?
Okay.
You just gotta not laugh. Then all of a sudden, you gotta be a Christian. You know what I mean? They give you little trinkets. They treat us like animals, man. That's really what they do. They understand psychology. So
like it's me.
Go ahead.
Kind of said the water, so I made a real heavy point. You know, and this is why they, invaded Black Wall Street. Not only were they hate to see us happy and smile. And it was brought out, I think Captain Kazari, I was talking to a producer, a young lady, just said that even one of the so-called good white people, or good oppressor, it was like, when she saw a show, the black boy called his father dad, and he just struck his spirit. And nothing was called dad. It's like just to see us happy. And I know some people today, some females, when they laugh, they cup their mouths. The black people, put their hand over their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
We can't even show that we're happy. We gotta be working hard to sweat. So like yourself.
Yep. You the slave class. They don't want to see a slave happy. All right. They don't want to see you doing good. Right? Just like how they gonna be in the kingdom. We ain't gonna let them do good in the kingdom. Right? It's already been said, like the one that's gonna probably get the less punishment is Japheth. They gonna get the less punishment than all of the nations.
So like y'all why is that?
Because they were the only nation that put us like that didn't really enslave us like that. They're the only nation that actually, even though we were enslaved with them like during the time of Judges, like once or twice. But it wasn't a brutal captivity. Japheth is, right?
Is that the Arabs?
No. It's the Polynesians, the Eskimos, Philippines, Samoans, yep. The Pacific Islanders, those are the Japhites. And they weren't brutal to us, so they would be treated not as bad as everybody else. You know who's getting the worst treatment of everybody else?
Oh, damn right.
The damn devil.
Yeah.
He gonna get the worst treatment.
Damn right.
But Japheth, he might be a good slave master over there. What they call it?
You house Negro.
I don't know. They're gonna be in my house, but you know what I'm saying. They'll be the taskmaster. They'll be whipping their back for you, like, hey, Balboa, Momoa. Hey, I don't feel like whipping his ass today. You go ahead and whip his Salaki. You don't feel like whipping his behind. You go ahead and whip him today, Salaki.
Right.
But that's how it is. They might be the taskmasters. They're not gonna be able to rule anything, but they might be like we might put them into a decent power position. We may, you know what I'm saying. But they go get the lesser the punishment that every other nation is, and that is biblical. I did see that the general brought that out. They will not get the severe punishment as the rest of the nations.
Oh God.
All right. Now, of course, they gotta pay because they did something, and they're heathens, but they're not gonna get the bruit of it. They ain't gonna get they ain't getting the point of the bullet or the point of the pier. They gonna get the side of it. all right? Because they're real peaceful. They're probably like the most peaceful heathen group that there is, for real, for real. They got a, like I brought out with the Sabians. The Sabian people was a Japhetic people, and I brought that out before. They was real peaceful. They even tried to work with the oppressor, but he went behind their back and killed them and drove them all off of their land, because they was in Europe before the oppressor. They was in Europe, that was their land. And the oppressor took the land from them and drove them off. That's why they in the Pacific Islands, and that's why they scattered about like that. All right. Let's see here. As the historian Ada Ferrer has written, at a basic level, liberation in Saint Domingue helped entrench its denial in Cuba. As slavery and colonization collapsed in the French colony, the Spanish island underwent transformations that were almost like the mirror image of Hades. Estimates suggest that between 1790 and 1820, some 325,000 Africans were appointed to Cuba as slaves, which was 4 times the amount that arrived between 1760 and 1790. So that's what happened. They had to bring more slaves there because during this time, they had the Haitian Revolution. So they had to bring more slaves in, right? Although a similar proportion of the population of Cuba was enslaved, at times slaves arose in revolt. In 1812, the Aponte slave rebellion took place, but it was ultimately suppressed. The population of Cuba in 1817 was 630,000, which 291,000 were white. 115 were free people of color, or mixed race, and 224,000 black slaves. So the free people of color was the mixed race. Those Edomites that snatched them up a Cuban woman, right? In part due to Cuban slaves working primarily in urbanized settings, by the 19th century, the practice of courtation had developed for buying yourself out of slavery. According to historian Herbert S. Klein, due to a shortage of white labor, blacks dominated urban industry to such an extent that when whites in large numbers came to Cuba in the middle of the 19th century, they were unable to displace Negro workers. A system of diversified agriculture with small farms and fewer slaves served to supply the cities with produce and other goods. In the 1820s, the rest of Spain's empire in Latin America rebelled and formed independent states. Cuba remained loyal to Spain. Its economy was based on serving the empire. By 1860, Cuba had 213,000 free people of color. So that tells you that. All right. Let's talk about that slave rebellion. I like it when Negroes act up. Right. I like to hear that. I don't like to hear we was all compliant and we was all good and well behaved. I don't like hearing none of that. I ain't like 7 years a slave. I like Django. You know what I'm saying? I like Django. I like seeing, we do what we gotta do. I leave it like that. You know what I'm saying? We get them sewing machines and we put holes in clothing. You know what I mean? A Ponte conspiracy. The Ponte conspiracy, also known as the Ponte Rebellion, which a large-scale slave rebellion in Cuba that occurred in 1812, is named after its alleged leader, Jose Antonio Aponte. See about him. So was Jose Antonio Aponte. He was probably he was a Judite. You know what his nickname was?
Locky, what's that? I don't know.
Black.
Negro.
Yeah, black. So he was a free black carpenter in Havana and was proclaimed to be a leader of a plot to rebel against the Cuban government, free the slaves and uplift the free people of color, and overthrow slavery in Cuba. The movement struck several sugar plantations on the outskirts of Havana, but it was soon crushed by the government. So they did try, but it got crushed. But yeah, that's a Judah right there. Look at him. They got a sketch of him. That's Judah right there. You can tell. I'll get y'all a picture of it. See, that's Judah right there.
Yeah, that's straight Judah right there.
So, leave it to Judah want to fight, right?
Come on.
So, due to the increase of slavery in Cuban society in the beginning of the 19th century, looking to secure the place left by Haiti as the major producer of sugar in the world, there was a series of conspiratorial attempts to organize and to abolish slavery. I find it weird that they call it conspiracies. To free yourself. You try to free yourself, they want to call it a conspiracy.
Right.
They see how they use their words.
Come.
But according to them, what they did, you know when the British was ruling America at one point, they was ruling America. That was looked upon as being noble to fight against them. They weren't called conspiracies. What they call them?
Fight against the British. That was a revolt.
No, what they call themselves? What do they call those people?
That fought against the British?
Yeah.
Was red coats?
Go ahead.
They were patriots.
There you go. They were patriots. That's the word they use. Patriots, like you. They were patriots. You know what I'm saying? But here, they was conspiracies. See the difference?
Okay.
Alright, one that stood out, it said there was a series of conspiratorial attempts that organized to abolish slavery. In their own land, they making conspiracies to abolish slavery. In their own damn land now. Think of this. Your own damn land. And you try to free yourself, it's like you trying to free yourself out of the house and they call you a conspiracist because you try to free yourself out of a house that you ain't supposed to be locked up in the first place. Right?
So like you, sir.
Go ahead.
The water real heavy out of wine, they used to create fake diseases. Like if you're a runaway slave, they say you got drapetomania. Those fake names they create themselves.
Yeah, so they can lock you up. You want to get free, they don't call you crazy. Right? They used to make mental asylums and they'll lock your behind up in there. But all the other goofies in there, all the other freedom fighters, lock you up in there. All right. One that stood out among these occurred in 1796, where the first abolitionist conspiracy was discovered in Bayamo, headed by freedman Nicholas Morales, who, when accused, fled and hid himself in Yariel near Hopewood. It's the conspiracy. In the year 1808, Napoleon's invasion of Spain and arrival of falsehoods around the theme of slavery caused a risky resolution on behalf of the Creoles in favor of abolition. Then in 1811 in Havana, a new abolitionist conspiracy was created by freedman Jose Antonio Aponte, and its reaches spread all the way to Sancti Spiritus, Trinidad, Camagüey, Bayamo, Halaguin, and Santiago in Cuba. The person who tied the Western conspiracy to the eastern part of the country was Hilario Herrera, a brave Dominican mulatto with a deeply anti-slavery consciousness and an excellent clandestine organizer. 11 March 1812, when the plot had exploded in Camagüey, Bayamo denounced the existence of a conspiratorial group in Hope. As a result of the investigation, more than 50 people were apprehended, and at the end of the trial, the local leader was sentenced to death by hanging. A man by the name of Juan Nepomuceno, who originally came from the Congo. His companions, Federico, Antonio, Miguel, and Manuel, were all given life sentences. So they went and got rid of all of them, killed all of them. So, of course, they always gonna talk about the Congo, but we all know, which I remember when I did a class on the people that when they sold us over here, right? I said it's still tension between the people that's there, that was part of those tribes, and the rest of everybody else. Just like we got tension between us and the rest of the community and the rest of the world, in America, we got tension. It's still the same way there now. But they don't tell you this because they want you to think you African.
Right.
Don't think you African so damn bad. Now, I don't know. We got to go, prove it. But what if those was Israelites over there in Africa right now? And they, don't get me wrong. This ain't the purple police. We ain't saying all the people in West Africa is Israelites. But it might be small little pockets of them from those tribes that they didn't get them all out, where they abolished slavery before they can get them all out. Like I said, there's small little pockets and families that's there that still hate the government because they sold they people. Still there today. And the government ain't even mad about it. I was bringing out, they was even saying that we shouldn't hold it against them. But that was a long time ago. Damn that.
All right.
You ain't even trying to make things right. They went and got rich. Like that, those people that sold us ended up getting rich in society. Right? See, a lot of times, we don't really get into the mix and how to understand how these things happen. Like right now, who controls America? The rich, right?
Come.
That's who control America. The Bill Gates, what they call it, the Rothschilds, the extremely wealthy. Jeff Bezos. He might just get into it now because he just became independently wealthy like that, right?
Rothschild, he got the Rothschilds.
Yeah, the Rothschilds been in the game for 500 years, right? Ruling the world, right? That's who really runs America, is the rich, right? Who does the bidding of those people? The police officers, the politicians, the government, the military. So how do you think they got us over here? The people that were rich, who wanted to get richer, who were thinking behind Africans, said these ain't our people anyway. So they rised up, made one group, made the Africans hate the Negroes, right? And when they made you hate they made them hate the Negroes and said we got to get them out of this land. So now they seen the money. It's so easy to fool people. I brought out it was like an article that they had did, right? And Florida, right? They I'm not, we're not supposed to be getting high no way, but I'm just gonna show you what happened, right?
Okay.
It was 94% of the people in Florida was okay with weed being legal, right? Then one billionaire put in $26 million of advertising, and it dropped in a matter of 6 months down to 47%. With just money alone. He changed the mind of people with just money. So imagine how things are going in this time, right? You can't do no back research on nothing. They didn't have internet. They would go in a public space and speak, and you just take their word for it. You couldn't see what's really going on, right? And so they sold, so then they raised them up, get them high and mighty, and they sold us so that they can make profits. Like to the tune of so much profits in Africa that when slavery stopped, their whole economy damn near collapsed. Just like the South economy collapsed when slavery was over, same thing happened in Africa. They don't tell you that. That's why a lot of them dirt poor like that, because the economy was so strong based upon slavery. Like you gotta think of everything you gotta do with slavery. You gotta have somebody to go catch them. You gotta have the gatherers. You know what I mean? You gotta have the people. Like it's a whole thing. It's a business. So you gotta have it all worked out, and that's what they did. They gotta have the scouters, the one that gotta find them. You know what I'm saying? You know, try to find them when they, sleeping or whatever, and they go snatch them up, round them up, and ship them off. Then you got the people go there sell them.
It's a lot, y'all. See, us Hebrews is easy to find. They just all they had to do was catch the ones that was taken back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, they smell too good to be one of us. Yeah, right.
Shit.
What's that? Zaryak and Libby Creations. That's a Hebrew. You get his mind out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
You smell too good to be one of us, man.
Smell like the body butter.
Yeah, no must at all? Damn. So, yeah, man. And it will just take us up, man. Let me see what else we got here. All right. So I hope the one thing that y'all understand about all this is our oppressor is the devil the Bible speaks of.
That's right.
I'm sure y'all get that from all of this, right? Let me see if you all right. Talk a little bit more about the slave trade. This project explores the extent to which the vertiginous growth of the slave trade based in Havana after 1808 was driven by the transfer of human and financial capital and expertise accumulated in the slave trade. After its abolition in the United States, the American dealers redirected their investments to Cuba, driven by the sustained boom in sugar and coffee in Cuba and the rising strength of the cotton market in the southern United States. A large group of American merchants joined forces with traders and planters in Havana. The results had long-term repercussions for Cuba. Had long-term repercussions. Cuba became the largest slave colony in all of Hispanic America, with the highest number of enslaved persons imported and the longest duration of the illegal slave trade. So even after it was considered illegal, because Cuba became a protectorate of the United States, so you're supposed to follow their law, they still was like, don't keep them enslaved down there, keep the money coming in. Because how they like to play with the rules. They like to say, well, they're a protectorate, or we're a protectorate of them. They're not American, but as long as the money that they're getting goes to America,
right? Yeah.
All right. About 800,000 slaves were imported to Cuba, twice as many as those shipped to the United States. Between 1808 and 1820, when the legal trafficking of slaves in Cuba ceased, the Spanish flag sheltered many American slave trade expeditions and the networks between American and Cuban merchants, as well as the West African factors, were consolidated. That means they still did it, they just hid it a little bit. This Atlantic slave trade project seeks to elucidate the ways in which the slave traders of Cuba created and consolidated a powerful infrastructure and a prominent position in the 19th century Atlantic slave trade. It builds on archival sources in Cuba and the United States and is embedded in theoretical and methodological framework of Atlantic history. So it's just a little bit of history of the slavery. Let me get a little bit. Okay. During the 18th, this is sugarcane and the growth of slavery. During the 18th century, Cuba depended increasingly on the sugarcane crop and on the expansive slave-based plantations that produced it. In 1740, the Havana Company was formed to stimulate agricultural development by increasing slave imports and regulating agricultural exports. So they would slow down the exports so they can keep it just flowing through, but then they would bring in more slaves, right? The company was unsuccessful, selling fewer slaves in 21 years than the British sold during a 10-month occupation of Havana in 1762. The reforms of Charles III of Spain during the latter part of the century further stimulated the Cuban sugar industry. Between 1763 and 1860, the island's population increased from less than 150,000 to more than 1.3 million. The number of slaves also increased dramatically, from 39,000 in the 1770s to 400,000 in the 1840s, roughly one-third of the island's population. In the 19th century, Cuba imported more than 600,000 African slaves, from most of whom arrived after 1820, the date that Spain and Great Britain had agreed would mark the end of slave trading. Most of them came after they stopped doing the slave trading, right? In the Spanish colonies. Cuban plantation owners were among those who insisted on continuing the slave trade, despite the controversies raised between the Spanish and British governments. During the period of 1838 to the 1880, the Cuban sugar industry became the most mechanized in the world, utilizing steam-powered mills, ingenios, as they called them, and narrow-gauge railroads. Expanding sugar mills dominated the landscape from Havana to Puerto Principe, expelling small farmers and destroying the island's extensive hardwood forests. By 1850, the sugar industry accounted for 4/5 of all exports, and in 1860, Cuba produced nearly 1/3 of the world's sugar. One little island produced 1/3 of the world's sugar. The phenomenal growth of the sugar industry propelled a new class of wealthy plantation owners to political prominence. Mexican Indians and Chinese contract workers augmented the labor force. So they had Aztecs Indians, and they had Chinese they call them contract workers, right? They augmented the labor force, so they also got them to come help in as well, right?
As contractors.
Exactly, as contractors. Although the conditions under which they toiled were nearly as degrading and dangerous as slavery, it was almost as bad as slavery, but it wasn't, right? Meanwhile, African slaves, who became more costly as the British Navy attacked slave traders on the high seas of the United States, abolished its own system of slavery. So the British Navy was attacking the slave traders on the high seas. So all the seas they had, the British was attacking those slave ships, right? In 1865, the African slave trade ended, although slavery was not abolished in Cuba until 1886. Rural life in Cuba was patently patriarchal, especially on the plantations. Lifestyles were more varied in urban areas, which were characterized by substantial free non-white populations and considerable occupational and economic diversification. Families tended to be large, augmented by extended kin and fictive kin relations. Women of the upper classes did not work, but many attained high levels of general education. Nevertheless, life was difficult even in the largest of Cuban cities. Most visitors to Havana found it unclean and a dangerous place to walk about. In addition, the island was plagued by recurring waves of disease, cholera, malaria, and influenza, especially during the summer months. On the other hand, the social and cultural life of the city continued to develop to serve its residents' needs. All right. Then give us someone to bring up. All right. Anybody got any questions so far?
Allah can serve how may.
Go ahead.
A comment out of one, if I may. Just recently I saw a story about the unpleasantness going on in Ukraine and whatnot. It's been reported that Russians have been capturing Ukrainians and forcing them to do unpaid labor. You know what I mean? Putting them into the field, and I don't know if they're whipping them or not, but they doing some slavery, sir.
Most High Christ. Yeah, Most High hand. Let them be in some slavery, man. They deserve it. The Ukrainians, like, people don't. That might actually be another topic. People think like there is some good Caucasian people. There is none. Right?
Right.
You know, black people were ruling in Europe, in the Soviet Union, right?
Okay.
Y'all notice it was black people there. Go ahead.
So like you said, that was the Dark Ages, right? Is that was it the Dark
Kind
Ages?
of part of the Dark Ages. Go ahead in the conference call.
Block out one. Ain't that the reason where all the priests, are on the wall, the disciples are on the wall, you know what I'm saying, over there in Moscow, in those big cathedrals, they have actual paintings of the apostles and the disciples on the walls of those cathedrals.
Kind of monks over there. That's why if you look at the history of, like, the last place to really get us out of power was Russia. That's why the Soviet Union didn't get established to what? The 1900s down there? That's why it took them so long, because we were still in power there. When they started taking over the, we was in, what was it, like, places like Spain. We was in, what's the other place? Those places in Spain we was ruling. Give me some more European countries.
So like I got this article I had that I had screenshotted. It said black kings and queens ruled Europe almost 700 years. History confirms that the Moors ruled Europe, primarily Spain and Portugal. For almost 700 years, they were known for their influence in European culture, but not many people know the Moors were actually Europeans of African descent.
There's one to say African, of course.
Of course they're going to say African. And then it goes on to say Moors were usually depicted as being mostly black or very swarthy. And hence the word is often used for Negro, according to the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah, that's what swarthy means, is black. Go ahead on the conference call.
Federal concert. Also, Scotland is where.
That's what it was, Scotland.
Yeah. If I may, we have Germany, the black nobility.
Yep.
All that stuff.
All that, Germany. We was over all of that. And when we started losing power, a lot of us, you know, fled to the east because we still had settlements in Russia area, right? We still had settlements there, and black people still ruling. Then they got us all out, and then now you got your vampire sounding people over there, sound like Dracula. All right, go ahead.
Well, I got one if I may.
Go ahead.
Our people rule, you know what I'm saying, all of Europe from Portugal all the way back to parts of Eastern Asia, Western Asia, Slovakia.
Mm-hmm.
The whole region all the way down into Italy and Greece as well. During that time of the Mediterranean period when they started whitewashing everything, we ruled everything.
Yeah, we ruled all of that. So don't let them tell you that white people was always ruling. They were not. So we ruled a lot of places. It's a little bit, it could be a little challenging to find out where it was because of all of the whitewashing of everything. But there was plenty of black nobility and rulership all over. Don't let nobody tell you that there wasn't no but devils out there ruling all over Europe. Nah. We put them mugs in chains. They was in chains. But then what we started doing was we started giving them positions of power. And then when they gained enough power, they ended up taking it back over. And it just went from one country to the next. One of the last places was Scotland, and then the final place was Russia, right? That they took over. And they took it back, and then that's when, you know, I even think like Switzerland was full of black people. Like a lot of places full of black people. And they took it all back. So, because the thing they don't tell you is a book called Black Indians. They'll tell you all of the ships until the 1600s didn't even come from Africa. They came from Europe with slaves. How you got black slaves? Where they come from then?
Right.
I'm just telling you, they came from Europe. We was ruling.
Okay.
What happened to King James? They killed him, didn't they? Yeah, they killed the black nobility and put everybody else in chains and sold you to America when they found it. That's what happened to you. All right, anything else? You all good here? All right, with that, pass the class on to priest and officer, my SHALAM.
All right, get that priest and prophet another powerful hand for me. All right, I.S.U.P.K. Security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother and sister. When a new brother or sister comes to the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment, Numbers 18 and 21, Malachi 3, 8 through 10. Ma'ashra means 10th in the Hebrew. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory, whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations is the Lord's 53rd Passover. It is mandatory to be there. Akim and Akwathium to check the bulletin board in the hallway. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing all black boots, shirts, pants, headband, and scarves. And to Google address every time they are heading to the school. All right, and with that, we'll give the teacher a courtesy salute. Men of Israel, Amijah. Amijah Shabbat. Amijah. Barak.
Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shabarakatah.
Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbat
Yasmatah means hand down, class dismissed.